Hi, and welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. Today, we get another book club, and Kathryn and I love doing these because it gives us a chance to share with you our thoughts, takeaways, any kind of applications from a book we recently read that we feel strongly is designed for our audience, and that's you, the entrepreneur. And so if this is a book you're familiar with, you'll enjoy some of our takeaways. If it's not, maybe it'll encourage you to go download the audiobook or go to your local bookstore or that crazy Amazon service that'll drop one on your front door maybe by tomorrow. The book is Unreasonable Hospitality, and as we look through some of the thoughts around his framework, I want to make sure that you stay focused with us on the takeaways, because this book is, I mean, chock full of great application, and nobody is demonstrating that better in her professional life than my co-host and partner, Kathryn Pedersen.
I'm excited for this book. It was really fun to hear about a different industry and how much it applies to our industry. But I don't know, made it just a really great read.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I sat with our friend Roy Michelle last spring. I think it was maybe a year ago right now, if I had to be honest with you. I think it was the first, well, we're recording this in early May of 2026. This was early May of 2025. And we'd like to grab a cup of coffee or a lunch when we're together. And as we sat down, he slid this one across the table to me and said, "You've got to read this. This is right up your alley. Your coaching clients will love it." And of course, when Roy is that adamant about something, I'm going to at least pay attention to it. And I found myself reading it casually last summer because it was an easy read, meaning it wasn't a highbrow book. It was really just full of great stories, if I'm being
Mhm.
honest about it. And it was fun to hear some of those stories. But as time has gone on and I'm having more clients that have interacted with it or found it on their own, I'm realizing, wait, this thing, it's like the onion. You keep peeling it, and there's
Yeah.
another layer and another layer. And I think you found that as well, maybe with
Yeah.
a friend of yours.
Yeah. I have a friend, Jody, who owns a couple restaurants in Palisade, and she's actually also done some presentations about this book to her. She's also on a property management team. And I think for her, like she's really, really good at restaurants. She's really, really good at she owns a motel. And the way that she does things is different. And I think she's really like the human version of what this book represents. So it'll be fun to think about her through this book and through this podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that you got some context with it as well. You know, when Will, the author, talked about his buddy from New York that had this operation. His buddy's last name was Canless. I thought, Canless, that's familiar. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, there is
Mm.
a wonderful restaurant that his buddy opened in
Oh,
Seattle. And another guest of ours, Jay Kroll, had invited me there for a dinner in which we celebrated Dean Johnson maybe 2 years ago. When Dean went through his retirement, we had this big party there. And I looked back and I thought, of course, that's his buddy, because that restaurant just understood all of the kind of things that we read about in this book.
yeah.
And I think there were some key takeaways there that I'd love for us to unpack with the audience, because,
Mhm.
he talks about this term unreasonable, or setting the unreasonable standard. That
Yeah.
was one of the things, clearly when a provocative title like that exists, it,
Hmm.
it forces you to want to say, okay, what does
Yeah.
that even mean? It sure seemed. I mean, let's take it at face value. It's certainly
Hmm.
going, whatever you want to say, the extra mile, above and beyond, all those things. But he really focuses on creating memorable
Hmm.
moments. That,
Yeah.
to me, was the twist on it. It wasn't just do more. It was make sure it connects with people emotionally. And I really
Hmm.
loved reading about some examples like that, because that story about creating a picnic inside the restaurant, or whisking families away to enjoy, these surprise tailored experiences. That is a reminder that your creativity really matters if you want to make that emotional connection and a memorable moment. I thought that was great.
Yeah, there was the one that stands out for me was the hostess or host stand. And he described what normally happens when you go into a restaurant and then what they decided to do, which was when someone walks in, say, "Oh, hi. Hi, Mr. Peterson. It's great to see you. How was your day today? What's going on? Your table's almost ready." and then whisk them off to a table without sitting there and punching in a bunch of buttons saying, "Oh, let me see if your table's ready." So just changing it up by Googling the person to find an image, and then when they walk in, say hello by name. And I thought, oh, what an interesting concept. Because if you think about it, it really is that first moment that you have to set that memory. And they thought through everything. And that's one of the things that just solidified in my brain with this book.
It's such a good one. And to give credit, I had that experience once prior to reading the book, and it's a place that you and I attended the Housing Wire gathering last
Oh,
year. I remember pulling up to the Broadmoor in beautiful
mm,
Colorado Springs, and as you pull up to the gate, and as you meet whoever is greeting you at the gate, and they have some opportunity to make sure that you know where you're going and all of that, they're picking up in their earbud, they're making conversation with you, but someone is listening on the other end, and it's like a chain of wonderful interactions from there, because
mm,
now as you pull forward, you're being greeted by name. As you walk in, they're like, "We're expecting you." As you walk up, they've already put the thought into it. So all those things you just described from the host table in the story, if you've ever experienced that, let me tell you, it's not a joke. It literally changes your whole attitude about not just what you've spent to have that
mhm.
experience, but really whether or not you'll repeat that experience. Because let's face it, there are a
Yeah.
lot of things in life that you'll spend money on to do once and you check the box. You say, okay, we've
Hmm.
done that. I think Will and folks that follow this ideology are truly committed to this idea of no, we want to create a relationship with you
Hmm.
and make this the place you plan to
Yeah.
come each and every time you have a special experience. That's a huge takeaway. Love that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't have to be big things. I think he brought up once that they bought sleds. There was snow outside in New York and they bought sleds for these kids and they were, $10 sleds. But like how great my kids would have I don't they would have run out of the restaurant so fast. That would have been the only downside. But holy cow, what how thoughtful. Imagine sitting at a restaurant and someone brings their kids sleds.
No,
I mean,
it's
crazy.
it is truly crazy. And again, I suppose my realization even at this moment while we're recording is it's possible that when we think of hospitality, our brains
Hmm.
maybe go first to the hotel industry, but
Yep.
he's really thinking like a hotelier does in the restaurant industry, because a
Yeah.
lot of those things happen. If you have ever been to, and we use the Broadmoor, so we'll pick other
Yeah.
brand
They're a good
examples.
one.
Yeah, they are a good one. I remember the first time we stayed at a Montage, which just felt like we walked into some sort of palace. It was just over the top. It was amazing. But like he describes, they're thinking ahead of not just who's coming, not just is this a special occasion, but what are some of those things that could make that experience even more memorable? I think Will calls it "give them the pickle" in the book, and it's really
Yep.
that whole idea around those little personalized gestures that leave you as the person experiencing them thinking, okay, who thinks of that? Who
Yeah.
does that? And imagine what a separator that becomes. And by the way, not at the expense of the dining experience in his restaurant. I mean, this
Mm.
is what the number one restaurant in maybe the world, but certainly in the New York City, which is top
Yeah.
of the heap. I mean, you just don't do any better. They're not sacrificing the food quality in
Mhm.
order to do this. It's actually reinforcing the food quality because
Yeah.
you now have this experience. That whole thoughtful gesture just seems like such a separator. And again, let's talk application because we said we would do that. We've given a couple of these examples. What does this turn the wheel a little bit? If you're in the housing
Mm.
industry, I don't care if you're on the real estate side, lending side, or one of the services, have we as an industry become more reasonable with our hospitality and we no longer think unreasonably? I mean, is that a possible avenue for us to travel?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I think so many times you get into widget production that you forget it's not a widget to everybody, it's a home. And there's so many things I think we can take from this book and think, okay, how do we greet somebody when they walk in? What does it look like? What are they seeing? What are they experiencing? How are they feeling? When they're nervous, what does that look like? How long are they waiting? I mean, every single bit of that process you can analyze. And I think that's where it can turn that knob to go, wow, that was a really different experience than what I thought it would be, or what I'm used to, or what I've dealt with in the past. And I think some of those just little tiny things can make such a difference. And it's great to think through. They don't need to be expensive. I just think they need to be thoughtful, and you need to dissect things one by one. I thought of a whole bunch of things of, wow, I wonder if instead we do this or that. So it's been a great thought process to go through as I've read the book.
Okay, so you're getting my wheel turning. I'm now, of course, curious about all these things you've already thought of. Most of us that work in a referral relationship with a partner have a process in which we get referred. We have a process in which we get introduced. And this to me feels like an opportunity to upgrade that whole transfer. Because if my intention is as a partner to set you up in such a way to where the level of service you're going to deliver is this level of unreasonable hospitality, then, I mean, please don't think of this as selfish, but
Hmm.
doesn't that reflect positively on me if I'm sending a lead to you and I already know that when I do, the experience this person is going to get is going to be head and shoulders above an experience that anyone
Hmm.
else is going to offer them. So I want to do everything I can to set that properly, which means I might ask better questions up front with my client before I introduce them. I might learn some things about not just what they need, but why it's important to them, and really dig
Yeah.
into the story behind the story so that I understand what's going on. That way, when I'm transferring this information to you as a referral,
Yeah.
I'm reminding you as my partner, here's your opportunity to shine. Yes, they need a home, or yes, they need a loan, or whatever the
Yeah.
transactional need is, but here's the story behind it. And how excited would this client be to get that introduction to someone they've never met? And suddenly this person makes them feel seen and heard and known instead of just, oh, here's a link to our loan application.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to make sure we cover is there's a lot of management advice in here that I thought was really good, and leadership advice in here.
Well,
Things
give us
about,
an example.
oh yeah. So there was one where he had an employee who showed up and had been drinking. And he said, obviously be slow to hire, quick to fire, but he said, but not too quick. So he sat him down and said, hey, this is what I've heard. I want to hear the truth. And he said, don't do this again. And when you come in, you get to apologize to everybody, but it kind of changed how that person thought about their job. And I think it really helps solidify the team a little bit more. And so, just how do you approach certain scenarios? And also, how do you celebrate with the team? What do you do to build them up when you have a setback? So, there was a